Completing this chapter, the learner will be able to recognize the master's responsibilities for the aftercare of survivors. State what is meant by a place of safety. Recognize what is meant by immediate care of survivors. Identify what to do when deceased persons are picked up. The International Convention for Search and Rescue requires state parties to ensure that assistance is provided to any person in distress at sea and to provide for their initial medical or other needs, and deliver them to a place of safety. Any ship rescuing survivors must comply with this. But what is a place of safety? A place of safety is a location where rescue operations are considered to end. It is a place where the survivor's safety of life is no longer threatened, and where their basic human needs, such as food, shelter, and medical needs, can be met. It is a place from which transportation arrangements can be made for the survivor's next or final destination. An assisting ship should not be considered a place of safety based solely on the fact that the survivors are no longer in immediate danger once aboard the ship. An assisting ship may not have appropriate facilities and equipment to sustain additional persons on board. It may not be able to feed and care for the survivors. Even if the ship can temporarily accommodate the survivors and serve as a temporary place of safety, it should be relieved of this responsibility as soon as alternative arrangements can be made. Often, the assisting ship may be able to transport the survivors to a place of safety. However, if performing this function would be a hardship for the ship, the Rescue Coordination Centre should arrange other alternatives. People recovered will need simple directions and possibly some assistance to shelter. You should decide in advance where you want survivors to go aboard your ship, how they are going to get there, who will take them, and who will look after them once they arrive. You should also include provision for those who are physically incapable of moving about the ship. Areas with some privacy, like the ship's hospital or a warm, comfortable cabin, are better than public areas like the mess room, unless there are too many survivors to accommodate. Once on board, the medical and welfare of survivors should be attended to. Survivors should not be left alone, particularly if they are injured or showing signs of physical or mental exhaustion. Additional advice or assistance should be sought from the search and rescue authorities or the International Medical Guide for ships. You can use the IMSAR Volume 3 checklist as a reminder of the types of questions you should be asking the survivors. There are 3 main reasons for asking questions. Firstly, we must make sure we have rescued everyone. We must also make sure that we are aware of any injuries they may have sustained in the incident, and of any ongoing medical condition they have that may need treatment. And they obtain information that may improve search and rescue operations. Care and a calm approach need to be taken when questioning survivors, as they may be frightened and confused. During a search and rescue operation, there may be times when the outcome is not as hoped. Without putting rescuers in any further danger, attempts should be made to retrieve the body or human remains and any belongings at the scene that may be of use in identifying the deceased persons or of comfort to the family. These articles should be stored separately in a container and labelled so that they can be associated with the correct person later. Bodies recovered, or people who have died aboard ship, should not be kept near the place where you are sheltering the living. You need to be aware of the treatment of hypothermia, and in particular that people suffering from hypothermia may appear to be dead, but can still be resuscitated. If in doubt, ask for medical advice. If a body is recovered from the water or a survivor dies on board, it is very important to make out a short document containing the following information, if known. The full name of deceased, their age, the place, date and time of death or when they were found, and the cause of death. The body should be carefully laid out, placed in a body bag or wrapped and stored in a suitable place on board, usually refrigerated. Full consideration should be made in respect of known religious or cultural beliefs regarding the deceased. The World Health Organization book, The International Medical Guide for Ships, is carried on board most ships. This contains advice on the care of a deceased person and the treatment of survivors. If it is known or suspected that a deceased person had an infectious disease, all material and objects which had been in direct contact with the deceased person must be cleaned and disinfected or destroyed. The International Convention for Search and Rescue requires state parties to ensure that assistance is provided to any person in distress at sea and to provide for their initial medical or other needs and deliver them to a place of safety. A place of safety is where the survivor's life is no longer threatened, their basic needs can be met, and from where transportation arrangements can be made. Plan in advance where survivors can be accommodated and looked after on your ship, and who will look after them. Survivors need to be debriefed to ensure that everyone has been rescued, that all their medical needs are met, and to obtain information which might help future search and rescue operations. Both IMSAR Volume 3 and the International Medical Guide for Ships contain advice on the care of a deceased person and the treatment of survivors.